You're listening to the Surgeons of Horror podcast.
Hello, welcome to the Surgeons of Horror podcast. Its purpose is to dissect and discuss horror films, both old and new. This current podcast episode, we're going to be opening up a film that's actually 20 years old, if you count the fact that it was released back in 2000 in August for part of the Munich Fantasy Film Fest. And that film is Ginger Snaps. And I have to say, I'm a big fan of this particular film. I know some people weren't. I grew to like it. My first encounter of it was, I'm pretty sure, was at the Fright Fest Film Festival in London, in the UK, and of which I used to kind of frequent in the dark hours of the night in order to satiate my own bloodthirst for the celluloid film. Anyway. But that's enough of the ramblings about myself. I should introduce myself for the podcast. My name is Saul Muerte, and I'm the lead surgeon as we dissect these films. But I need somebody to support me in the discussions, and for this particular episode, I have with me Richard Lovegrove. Welcome aboard, Richard.
Hello, Ginger Snaps.
Hello, sir.
Ginger Snaps.
Oh, get you snacking away.
And look at me go. Look at it. Oh dear.
Yes, this isn't to be confused with a red-headed crocodile that's got anger issues. This is a female take on the classic lycanthropy legend and story set what was then modern times. Obviously, it's, as I said, about 20 years old now. So,
yeah.
Richard, like I've expressed how I kind of came into the film, and I have said that I did like it when I watched it, and I'll reserve where I stand with that now that I'm watching it 20 years on. But when did you first see the film? Is it semi-recently, or did you kind of remember it when it came out?
This is one where like I personally have a lot of nostalgia for the year 2000, which now it's scary to sort of like, think that it's 20 years on. The year, the Olympics came to Australia, and we had so much time off school. It was a very, very good time.
Australia!
Yes. Yep. No, I had seen, I think, a poster for it, or maybe a trailer or something around that sort of time, because my sister was into a lot of sort of horror films, and so I'd be exposed to a lot of these kind of films in that sort of a light. But no, only recently when we came to see this, that it was like, okay, well, let's have a gander at it. But I really enjoyed it. I thought the take on it was fantastic. I got right into it. And even when you were saying a female take on the werewolf story, obviously that there's like, a metaphor and a symbology behind it. But regardless of it, I found it to be a very interesting werewolf story. And the take on it being that way can be interpreted in each way by it being a coming-of-age story and the puberty thing, which usually is reserved for a more male and masculine
that's right.
sort of stereotype. But when you're thinking about like werewolves and things like this, and it's not a vampire, it's not that sort of like sleek, almost effeminate sort of thing. It's a very primal, energetic, muscular sort of thing, which surprisingly, doesn't get the allowance or the credence that most people would expect to it. But I think it works absolutely brilliantly. And with the subject matter as well, you can feel the fear, and it's not a gender thing. This is a film where I think, regardless of you being male or female, you can still be emotionally attached to what the characters are feeling and their fears at that point, and make it relatable in some way to your own self. But no, I thought it was brilliant. I thought it was on par almost to the idea of the American Werewolf in London. It had a similar sort of honesty to it. As much as there were effects in it that sort of made it a bit larger than life. I'm not necessarily the fan of the Angel, the Buffy series, when they had those sort of extreme effects on the face and stuff like that. But because it's that slow change and metamorphosis of the character, it's personified. And also, again, I'm a huge fan, especially in horror, the trope of perspective and subjective storytelling. So us seeing the story from Bridget's character point of view might just be her personification of what she sees in Ginger changing.
Yes.
And so I really enjoyed it. I thought it was
Cool.
Again, a surprising, uplifting thing. Yeah.
Yeah, that's right. Oh, the humor in it is notably dark, and that suits my taste anyway. I kind of liked that kind of like little quips here and there throughout the film. And and I just thought it was a refreshing take on what was then quite an old story. If you think about the legend of lycanthropy, is that it has a very kind of it's an ancient story in itself. It's part of the reason why Universal picked it up, way back in 1941 with the Wolfman to run as part of their classic Universal, what we now call the classic Universal monsters. And it is arguably a timeless story, and it is kind of nice to see it kind of shift and change in this direction. And that's what I really enjoyed it for that purpose. Yeah, it was a really kind of cool thing. The other thing that's probably interesting, or what I think lends weight to it, is the two leads in it are incredibly great actresses.
Absolutely,
and I think that really, really helps. I mean, we have Emily Perkins, who we have spoken about before in Stephen King's It. She played the young Beverly Marsh. Before she would then turn up here in a couple of years later or a few years later to play Bridget Fitzgerald, one of the sisters, and then alongside her is Catherine Isabel, who she's become a bit of a modern screen queen. She kind of broke out in this particular role as Ginger Fitzgerald, and from the title of the film. But she would also crop up in the more recent Friday the 13th, the remake, as one of Jason's victims, as a little bit of a stoner. But more from my point of view, another film that I absolutely love, and it's from the Soska twins, and it's called American Mary. And I love that film. I think it's really cool, and she's equally brilliant in that too. But I have to also say that it's the casting of the mum with Mimi Rogers as well was just a real nice touch, I found.
Not only that, but also to the casting of the counselor, is it? Who they go and see about halfway through the film.
I love that.
She's just perfect.
I don't know who she is. I should have looked that up actually, but I had that when I watched it this time round. I couldn't remember her from the first time round, but when I watched it this time round, I kind of went, that short sequence was just gold.
Yes, yeah, it really, really was. It was both. It was terrifying. It was on the nose, and this sort of like preppy positiveness, and the angle of which it was shot with her performance as well. It was just, it was great. I thought it was really good because it was one of those things, especially in horror, like or things that are alluding to the scientific nature of explaining of why certain things are. You don't. Yeah. It's smashing you in the face. You just want to yell at that person. No. You're explaining the thing that is the misdirection, But within it too, that in itself is terrifying too. The situation of just being told in such a clinical, cold manner that it's also so preppy, and everyone goes through it. Now it's your turn. It's just like fuck. You don't want that to happen. And Bridget's character being in that gap as well, because she's now having to help out her older sister and dreading what she is going to become.
Yeah, exactly.
But that's great. No, I even just, as you mentioned it, twigged that Bridget was the young Beverly Marsh, but of course it's so apparent. She's fantastic in this too. Her honest performance that isn't over the top, because there's moments in which her performance obviously would lend itself to being that if it wasn't this subject matter. But her honesty, even in moments when there's immensely unpleasant gore, I'm never a fan of people eating on camera.
No.
But there's certain scene towards the end, and it's just there's so much to take on, and you're thinking this poor actress, but she's so committed to what she's doing that you believe and want her to succeed. Within that too, that
Definitely.
the myth of the lycanthropy, I've never really looked into the werewolf lore. To be honest, it's never really intrigued me because I saw it more of a Jekyll and Mr. Hyde sort of thing.
Yeah, it has. Yeah, it has a lot of similarities with that. That's right. Yeah,
Yeah, yeah.
yeah.
Which what was it? I thought it was funny. I think it was on something like a improvisation thing the other day, and they said what happens with like Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde when he at night he loses his qualification, he turns into a Mister. I like that because he's no longer a doctor at night. But yeah, like it's unlike vampires too, which has many different origin myths, like even dating back
Yes,
to the
yes.
Cain and Abel stories and then the land of Nod. But even with the mythos of transmorphication into animals, I mean, cats and women have usually got that. That stereotype. I mean, you got the
Yeah,
Catwoman. You've
that's
got
true.
other
Yeah,
films, even around the same time. I think as the Wolfman was coming out, they had a couple of spin-off films that different companies made as orientated about a Catwoman type thing. Not necessarily as the Batman,
yeah.
but a Wolfman type scenario.
Well, you got Cat People, which was the
Mm,
1940 odd film,
yeah.
which was by Val Lewton's production company,
Mm,
um, and that still is actually I recommend watching that. It's a really good film,
yeah.
and and that came out around that same kind of time frame. You're right. It got remade in like the 80s with Natasha Kinski as the lead female in that.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, so it's a cool little movie. But you're right. Yeah, so the cat kind of thing. I think well generally like the cats are associated with their feline kind of traits. So
Yeah.
it kind of always went hand in hand with that. Whereas the wolf has rightfully or wrongfully got more of a masculine kind of energy about it.
Yeah.
Because I guess because of the savagery and the aggressiveness around that. But again,
Mm.
that comes back to why I think this was really refreshing because it's showing that women can equally be as aggressive.
Well, I think that within that too,
And
as
they're
you were saying,
going through
it's
those.
also a
Yeah.
sexual aggressive nature too. It's
Yes.
almost even part of that Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. I mean, when that was coming out, there was the allusions to I think absinthe or opium or
Yeah.
something like those sort of drugs, and whether or not it was in the actual story. Yeah, it's those sort of explanations for the darker sides of men's life, and obviously because of the times and the patriarchy that it was more of a man's story that was being told because that was where it was being done. But in this film, yeah, you've got those moments even when she's being more dominant in the bedroom in the back car of the car. But you're rooting for her because what was it in Rick and Morty? Rick says scientifically traditions are a stupid thing. Um, and it's a good point because it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter who's on top. It's the shared experience. That's why it's that sort
Yeah.
of thing. It's the origin of love. The two people back to back finding themselves, whether they be male and female, or female and female, or male and male. Um,
Yeah.
but yes, no. I think that this does it brilliant justice, and it's not something that you look at and I think guys would be turned off or girls would be turned off, like, as in it hits the
No,
nail
I
on the
agree with
head.
that. Yeah.
And it does what every
Yeah.
good horror film does by not pandering to those whatever.
Yeah, no, you're right. All right, well, look, we've kind of talked around it and our reactions to it, I guess, from when we first watched it. So let's start dissecting the plot narrative. So those that are new to listening to the podcast, is what we do. We kind of start going through the plot line and dissect as we go along, and kind of add our little quips and quirks with our reactions to what we watched and whether it resonates or not, or did it impact at the time.
Yes.
So we open up with a small town in or suburbia of America. We have a mother who finds her dog has been mutilated. So we just see like the carcass remains of this dog, and it's strung across the lawn.
Mm-hmm.
At the same time, we're seeing a slideshow of the two sisters, Bridget and Ginger, as they are creating these kind of like staged death scenes for a school project, which they will play in their classroom.
Yeah, no, all of those were brilliant too.
Yes, I loved it. It made me just go, and when I was rewatching again, and it reminded me of when I first watched it. But I was just like, my reaction to it was like, "Damn, I'd love to do something like that."
Yeah, what was it? The picket fence one was one that got me because it's a hard cut to that, and I instantly went, "Oh, cool!" Like I went, the effects budget isn't up there, but it was really effective. That sort of snap thing, and then she starts moving, and you're like, oh, but still, like there was another one as well that I saw when I was just quickly before this watching a review about it, a feminist review about it, but it had a clip of the pitchfork going through Bridget's neck, and I didn't see that when I watched it in the film, and I was like, that's fucking brilliant. And I was like, how did they do that? They probably would have found that, worn those things down, and then just put the stuff there.
Yeah.
But it's great. Right. But also too, like from the beginning of the film, as you said, it opens up with a dead dog, like a dog being like torn apart, and so one of the things checking on the internet, does the dog die, which is doesthedogdie.com, which is usually something I mention, and it's like yes, straight away. And I think the first thing it comes down to, there's 17 votes saying yes, 0 saying no, saying there are a lot of graphic scenes of dead dogs and scenes where Ginger kills a dog, so definitely not one for dog lovers. So if you that way, they're all puppets and stuff like that, but it still seems very safe. Yeah, there's animal rights very well done in this film. I think it's
it's
well.
good. It's good.
But it opens up on a very gross death of a dog.
I do really love that whole thing, because obviously, like the dog dying is such a big trope in horror films, but I love the fact that they just really milk it. So there's like 3 or 4 dogs that die in this film.
Yeah,
they're just like nothing's safe.
No.
Yeah, I like it.
Yeah, well, that's right. Okay, it doesn't just start up on the dog dying, because it starts off on a little kid in a sand pit, and he touches something on the ground, and then touches his mouth, and it's blood. And I was just like, what's he eating in a sand pit? What would make you in a sand pit go, I'm going to put that in my mouth? I know little kids are supposed to have done that, but and that's where you sort of find out. So it also set up to me that it wasn't just a dead dog. It wasn't just sort of like mauled by a dog, or like a larger dog or something like that. It was like torn apart. There was bits of the dog that you could tear up in chunks. So it was at this point too, I didn't know it was a werewolf film. So
nice.
Yeah, so that's I started watching it and I was like, oh, okay, cool. I was going almost out of space at this point. I didn't know if it was a disease that made them explode, like the stuff, or
Wow.
Yeah.
So you really did come in cold. That's cool.
Yeah. But it made me enjoy it so much more, because when I very early on got the idea of what it was, I think by the time of the attack, I think it was. Yeah. That's no. It was after the attack, because that's when you're sort of going, is it this? And then it sort of starts playing the motions. But it had me right on there, because before that I thought it was just a coming of age story that was going to be a bit hardcore, like as in not hardcore, but on the nose. About it. But Courtney, my sister, also said that it was one of those films that was in the style of Carrie, those coming of age female films.
Definitely, yes.
But Carrie as well, like another brilliant film that that is.
One day we will do Carrie. We will do it at some point.
Yeah, it would be interesting too, even just having the comparison of the old versus the new as well.
Yeah, definitely. It will be there at some point. We will visit it. We do like our Stephen King, so at some point we'll materialize it along the way.
Yes.
All right. So they end up kind of, as I said, they shoot this kind of school project. So this is what they're kind of all these kind of fake death things are presented, and we see it in from the point of view when they present it in the classroom to their teacher, who is also the school's guidance counselor. And he kind of is very. I love his performance after watching it.
Oh yeah, he's
like,
great.
Wow. He goes, that's pretty horrific, really, isn't it? Really,
Yeah, it has a very sort of slow reaction to him, sort of going, oh, like that. But I was like, I thought it was like an art class, because that's usually where you do those sort of things. I know in English you can do them as well, but I would have thought you would have heard the reaction. You would have seen the input of what they had done with the special effects, and regardless of story, they've gone to an effort, and they've gone to a pretty substantial effort. So, like, you know, you got to give them some credit where some credit's due, even if you turn around and you say the subject matter was too much. But, like, you know, if you got other students in the class going, oh, cool, like that, and not in a way of going, yeah, tits and ass, or whatever, you know, then, I don't know, you got to turn around and say, well, the audience liked it, at least.
yeah.
But
and
that
that's what
too
matters, not critics.
Yeah, but in that too, like without saying anything, you get the sense that they're also outcasts. You also get from the very first thing of her coming home, and I wasn't too sure where they were living either, because the room that they're in is like a cement wall or brick wall or something like that, and it almost looks like
a basement, doesn't it? Like it's
kind of and they're sharing a room. Yet the rest of the house is pretty beautiful, but it's because they're very close, so close that they've got a blood pact. Or at least they have when they were younger. And
Ginger mentions that at the beginning, doesn't she? Because she's kind of playing around with a knife, and she's talking about suicide at this point, too.
Yeah.
I mean, we're going back a few steps. But so we are instantly kind of realizing that there's some kind of death wish from Ginger, at least from Ginger's point of view.
Yeah.
And from... Bridget's kind of perspective, it's hard to know whether she's just towing the line or not at this stage. So we then kind of cut to them as they kind of like just smoking cigarettes, kind of play, and they're playing this game called Search and Destroy, which is on the kind of school kind of field, like the American, football field essentially.
Oh yeah.
And they're kind of dissing people they don't like, and imagine how they would die, At this point, we get like one of the friends of the main kind of character. I think it's Trina.
One of the girls overhears them.
Yeah, overhears, and she kind of basically kind of tells Trina about what Bridget's been describing.
Just before that, you said what was the game that they were playing? Because I just imagined they were playing some sort of hockey game. I didn't know it was Canadian either, even though it's pretty apparent.
No. The game they're about to play on the field is hockey.
Oh,
but the girls are playing a game that they've created called Search and Destroy. So they kind of look around. They just sit around and they look around.
That's what they call it.
Pick out targets and and kind of just say, all right, that person, how will they end up dead? It's like this kind of riddle.
It's like that, shoot, shag, marry, whatever.
Yeah, that's it. So we go back to Ginger Snaps. So they kind of get out onto the hockey field, and they are obviously these girls are over here. Them talking about how they're going to kill them. Take as like kind of just a little bit disgruntled by this, and so they go out to kind of take it out on Bridget. Ginger and Bridget are aware of this, and Ginger says, "I'll cover you." But unfortunately, Ginger gets distracted by a couple of douche heads, who are sitting on the beaches, kind of wolfing her down or something. Kind of doing something anyway. She gets distracted, so unfortunately, Trina pushes Bridget, and she ends up falling into the remains of another dog.
Yeah.
Now, my instinct here was, like, when I watched this, was like, how do they not see a carcass of a dog on the playing field before they started playing this game?
That's what I was thinking too, yeah. That's a bad teacher.
It is a bad teacher, yeah. Always clear your grounds before you start playing a game of hockey.
Exactly.
And it's quite gross because Bridget's face goes straight into this thing as well. So
it's all mushy.
A bit mushy.
Yeah, mushy.
And this is the point where they kind of want to get vengeance back on Trina, and they decide that they will kidnap her dog that night, and imply that the Beast of Bailey Downs, which is what's been dubbed as this kind of
the dog
beast
destroyer,
that's kind of going around killing dogs, and they're going to say that the beast has killed the dog. And that's their plan, to kind of get back on them. And there is another guy who's kind of skirting around on the outskirts as well. He's like this kind of drug dealer guy. Drug dealer, whose name is Sam in this as well. And Trina obviously has a bit of a thing for him, so she's kind of flirting around with him a little bit. But he's not interested in her. He's just there for selling drugs, man, getting money.
Yeah, he's just doing his
That's
thing.
his thing.
He just knows everybody.
He just knows everyone. Yeah. So the girls then set out that night to find the mutilated corpse of another dog because they want to kind of use that to kind of as their.
Well, yeah, they're just wandering along because they're going to try and find it, and then they find a mutilated dog, and they go, "Oh, well, let's use this as a more authentic thing." They try and pick it up, and it literally falls apart in their hands.
Yes, and that's great. I love that bit where they say, "Right, pick it up," and it's the leg just comes off and and she's just like, "Oh."
Well, I'm trying to think that there was a film like The Blob or something like that. Something like that happens. They're trying to hold on to that, and then their arm just completely comes off. And that's always because I saw, weirdly enough, those sort of images before I saw Jurassic Park. And so when in Jurassic Park the arm comes over the thing, and then she turns around and it's not attached to anything, it sort of sends my mind straight to there. It's like, oh my god, acidic thing ate off hand. Oh, The Fly. That's what I'm thinking of.
The Fly.
The Fly.
Oh, yeah.
Brilliant.
So, yeah, I'm glad you raised that because when this kind of came out, not only did critics kind of praise the casting of the two leads, but they were also kind of were talking about the body horror, gross out horror in it.
Yeah.
And likened it into the comparisons of Cronenberg's work. Particularly with the metamorphosis scene that kind of happens a bit later on.
Yes, yeah.
And I find that kind of equally fitting because obviously this is a Canadian film and Cronenberg is Canadian and that kind of whole background. So there's definitely a body horror thing about Canada, part and part because of Cronenberg.
Yeah.
But we also have this movie, and I mentioned the Soska twins as well, and they're Canadian, and American Mary kind of where Catherine Isabel starred in as well was one of their films. So, and their latest film was called Rabid, which was a remake of a David Cronenberg film. So there's a lot of. All I'm saying is what are they drinking in Canada? Because they definitely have a thing for body horror.
Yes. Yeah. Again, I really like this too because it's the. It justifies it because it's a subjective perspective of how the film is done. Because as we'll say later on, even with the prosthetics and stuff like that, there's certain things that it takes it to that sort of like weird out, creeped effect because, like, you know, there's nipples like a dog would have.
Yes.
Having said that, we'll get to it later on, but the paw configuration gets me a bit.
Okay.
Yeah, just because where a dog's thumb isn't where our thumb is.
No,
like,
it's not.
It's really interesting.
No.
There's a great little sort of graph you can see, a design graph of how different animals relate to how we're made up. And so, like, a horse's hoof is like one finger, like going right down, and all the other like limbs are right up the top. It's really interesting.
There you go.
Yeah.
Nice. Okay, so the girls find this dead dog, which they think will be the perfect kind of thing for them to kind of lay their kind of plan into place.
That's when she notices there's blood.
That's when they notice the blood on Ginger.
Yeah.
And they think it's from the dog, but it actually is Ginger's first period that's just happened. So, and at this point, it's a bit of a kind of almost like within a heartbeat. So that kind of conversation happens, and then all of a sudden the beast comes out and attacks them. The actual beast.
Yep.
And it pins down Ginger and drags her off into the woods, leaving Bridget kind of completely dumbfounded and scared about what's happening. This is very similar to the American Werewolf in London kind of bit that you were talking about, particularly when they get attacked on the moors.
Yeah.
And,
but even in this moment, I think the line she says just before, like she looks down, she feels the blood. She says, "I think I've got the curse." Or that's it. I've got the curse. Something to those effects.
Right.
That's then when she sort of like gets tackled by this sort of this beast, which you don't know what it is. And again, I didn't know what it was at this point, so it was just like, is it wrestling with fears, or that? So yeah, I was really down for it. But it's it drags her off into the woods, and part of what I do like about the film is you don't really know a lot about really anything, the geography or anything. I thought they were in like a playground. But like, you know,
well, there is like a one of those kind of rocking horse things that you get in playgrounds, you know, the things that toddlers sit on and it rocks around and stuff. So you see that. So they are kind of near a playground of some kind.
Yeah.
So it does give the impression that they're not completely in the wilderness. There is some sense of suburbia going on.
Yeah, yeah.
Although it may well be on the fringes of some woods or something. I'm not sure.
Yeah, because even when Bridget's running through the woods, she sort of gets into the middle of where you see it, and then she sees a backyard or something like that to somebody else's house. So yeah, it's obviously
right. Yeah.
a clearing or something. But yeah, but the rate that she's out there with this beast was me thinking, well, she's dead, because I wasn't thinking werewolf or anything in that like supernatural vein yet. But I would have imagined that, that length of time was it destroyed her. If she's coming back, she's either already dead and it's going to be a ghost story, or something. I don't know.
Yes. Well, because there's 2 times she gets dragged off. There's the initial attack, and then she gets dragged off again. So I get that kind of logical kind of pathway that you're going with that, because you and the way that we have seen it. The remnants of these kind of dogs that has already laid down before us.
Exactly.
You would kind of think, shit, she's fucked, right?
Yeah.
So, but then she does kind of come out of the blue again a 3rd time, and she just seems a little bit disheveled, and is still limping. Like Bridget still needs to literally kind of carry her. Yeah. And they start kind of run away from this beast from attacking again. Yeah,
well, because she hits, Bridget hits the thing with her camera, one of those old self-developing Polaroids, and and it goes off, and you hear like a "huh" sort of thing, and it runs off, and that's what gives them that ability to get away, which she later on develops it and stuff like this. But sort of at this point, one of those, I think it's the second attack, you see that bite has happened, or some damage has happened to that area, and then she limps off, and they run off onto the street, swerving in front of a car or something like that, and nearly getting hit. And then the van by the drug dealer is driving along and smashes right into it, and it like liquidizes. This is the only thing I didn't like about the film, and I guess it's hard when you work with practical effects and visual effects, and you have to mold those 2 things together. You have a sequence like this, that we don't know the density of the body, because one of the things I like about vampire myths is the density of the body. Because there's a whole myth about it being like a rigor mortis that's constant, so that's why they have an amazing strength. But there's certain versions of like Nosferatu where they're a lot more vulnerable physically and things like that. But there's certain other strengths in hypnosis and whatnot. But in this, it gets hit by the van and it almost sort of explodes, like liquidizes, like flubber, which sort of got me, because I was like, no, like this sort of a beast, it won't die. It'll jump up and it'll run off. But again, it's a film, and we'll take with what we get, and so we noticed that. But again, coincidental too that it's the drug dealer.
Yeah, that's right. In this sense, the whole kind of silver notion, which is normally bandied around with lycanthropy, isn't in this particular section. Like it's, or this particular film, I should say.
Yeah,
that kind of part doesn't play a role. It's more drug associated in the plant kind of chemical stuff that kind of comes up later on.
Yeah, no, well,
which has been used, in mythology. So,
Well, what was it?
But it does make me think. Like, my instinct was like, when that happened, was exactly the same as you. Like, that seemed way too easy for somebody that's going around terrorizing, killing people, and just kind of. And we've had evidence of it with the attack with on Ginger. Is that it's a powerful beast as well, so it does kind of defy logic that it just pulverizes, like you said.
Yes, no, exactly.
Yeah. So anyway, it does get hit.
There is no, you're right. There is the silver element. At least what I thought was silver was the earring that. In a moment.
You're right, you do.
Yeah.
I forgot that. Yeah, you're right. I take that back.
No, you're right.
I completely forgot about that.
It was because I didn't know if it was established as silver.
No, I don't know either, but I'm kind of thinking slightly that maybe it was. And if it was, they only use it only kind of, it almost works the same way garlic does or in film land, garlic does
Yep.
with vampires, in that it just keeps them at bay. It doesn't stop them from
Having said that,
still attacking them.
like, I've read that there's like the silver, like, in some lore of vampires, like, it affects it, like, as in, I think silver
Yeah.
is I want to say it's like a pure metal that was used in a religious sense, so it might be something that carries over into different supernatural elements that are reinforced by the similar deity. Being Catholicism and Christianity, because most of the time it's American horror stories that we're hearing about, and that's what binds those. But I also found that because they do have that, and you don't know if it works or not, or if it has any effect, and so you don't know if that's them trying to also distance themselves from a cliche, not the film, but.
Yeah.
Again, I love like Bridget's sensibility. She's trying to work it out because she's now seeing evidence of a supernatural thing. Now she's trying to make it work out in her head, and it would make sense to go, okay, well, all of the bullshit that we've heard would, most likely not be the case, because, it's what we know about medical science and stuff like that, and infections, and that's the sort of route she goes. But also too, in one of the reviews, when that happens, they pierce her navel. A lot of the time, the reviews are saying that it's a very sexualized incest sort of implications in that scene. I didn't really get any sense of that at all, because again, I thought it was the silver. So I thought she was sitting on her again because she's going to hold her down because she's going to be writhing in pain or whatever. Obviously you read into that being a similar release sensation that is in that moment, but I didn't necessarily read that into it, but it didn't take away anything else from it, because there is a slight romantic nature, at least, or a love connection that they definitely have as sisters. There's a couple of moments, shots where you don't know if they're actually going to kiss or something like that. But, But again, it might just be that illusory thing, or again, they're extremely close sisters. I mean, they've got a pact that they had made when they were younger to kill each other, not to kill each other, sorry, to commit suicide together. But
that's right.
It's pretty. It was weird to me to hear that they had made that younger than they currently are, because I was like, wow, you've been depressed for a long time.
They've got some issues.
Yeah,
and you're right. So like this, it's kind of like this is like how Frozen is, in the sense that the love bond between the two sisters is incredibly close. It's just not as dark, obviously. Although the original Snow Queen story is incredibly dark if you ever read that.
I think I used to love the Snow Queen story, or the Ice Queen, one of them. I can't remember exactly, but it was like, I don't know if you know this. What was it? Teabag and the rings.
I remember Teabag.
Yeah. T-shirt, Teabag, and the rings of something. And there was like 3. It was a mini series, and it was like low budget. But now I got to look that up. Nostalgia. But no. Yeah. Very, very cool.
Anyway, another digression. So the beast has been pulverized, killed by the van, and so this kind of brings the drug dealer dude into that circle a little bit as well, because of the incident that's happened. But the girls get back home, and Ginger's wounds kind of already healing, and she, even though Bridget says let's get you to the hospital, Ginger's like no, doesn't want to go. She doesn't want their mum to find out. Is the answer? Yeah, the reason she's saying that. So as a few days kind of passes, and she's kind of laid low, and she starts getting hair growing from the wounds. Yeah. And she starts to also sprout a tail. And she starts to menstruate heavily as well.
And in between this, I think that we're having those scenes where it's on the sports field and they're sort of still hanging around, and she slowly starts flirting with one of the other guys. Out there, and there's this sense of, from both sides, from both Bridget and from Ginger, that they're doing something behind their back, romantically with other people,
Yes.
Because the drug dealer turns up because they were talking about certain things, and she's
That's
like, "Why are
right.
you fucking coming here during class? Go away."
Yes.
And, yeah, and then the same thing as Ginger's going off with the boys. But this is the same time where she finds her in the bathroom stall and discusses the hair coming through, and she's saying, "I can't have hair coming out of nowhere. This is fucked." Because again, it's about that imagery as well of when she's coming into age, and that's what she becomes more sexualized by seeking this out.
Yes.
Mm.
Yeah, that's great, and I thought that was it's just a very the fit is just perfect, I think, and it works really well when that starts happening, and these changes coming through. The mum is of this kind of really overly protective mum, and she's quite overbearing, and even I'm jumping ahead, but even when the mum finds out that because she goes through all the dirty laundry and stuff, she's cleaning up after the girls, and finds out Ginger's started menstruating, and she does that kind of real. I'd hate it if I was a girl.
So,
and,
I was
and
about to say
did that to me. Like, it's so how embarrassing is that to kind of really. And there is, I guess there is. Is that but maybe I'm wrong. I'm a guy, so I'm kind of coming. I don't want to come from a kind of a completely kind of preachy kind of.
No.
View,
I don't think
I will never understand that. Obviously, being from the
no,
the
but
other
I don't
side
think that's
of
where you're
the
coming from. I think it's
Yeah.
the sense I sort of took from it was the embarrassment of something that was so personal and something you don't want people to celebrate or to ridicule. You just want to be sort of left alone to deal with it.
It is true, though, isn't it? But then, like, I equally understand women that do kind of celebrate it because it is about that kind of turning becoming a woman, and it's society has this way of kind of suppressing these things, particularly with women.
Yeah.
And it becomes taboo when it shouldn't be taboo. Do you know what I mean? It should be a kind of it should be, if anything, a celebration. I don't mean kind of like kind of hands out, dancing, singing kind of celebration, but it should be more. Society should be more. It's the sign of women, coming in, that girls coming into womanhood. But
exactly. Somewhat like a bar mitzvah type thing.
Exactly. Like,
celebration of coming of age, which is like I guess the sweet 16 type. I guess that has bad connotations to it as well.
It does have a bad connotation.
You're right, and one of the things I love about all those family scenes, especially the ones with the father there, is that it feels all round like that. It feels awkward from all round, and you get the impression, as you said, when they bring out the cake later on, that there's almost like a disappointment from the father. Like, oh, well, like, she's not my little girl anymore. And then, I thought, I'm really jumping ahead here, but screw it, I'm going to do it anyway.
No,
I really thought that the father was going to get killed. Something was going to happen with the father. Because he disappears. And I thought, like, after watching the film and going, okay, well, thinking about it, like, chronological order and going back over it, I guess that's probably also saying something too about it, because it's that idea of no longer daddy's little girl. Not saying that that's necessarily what happened either in that situation or in general, but the feeling of how she would feel in that sort of thing. And it's awkward and uncomfortable, but it's brilliant. I love that because that's what's so good about this film. It makes you feel so many things, and it puts you in those situations, which, again, I'm male as well, so I don't know if it's necessarily something inappropriate that I'm feeling when watching these, by feeling those things. But it seems as if it is. It seems like it's a good enough film that it's communicating it in the way that a filmmaker has done well. Right. I don't even know if it was directed by a woman or a man.
It was a guy, that directed it. It was
really cool,
John Fawcett, was the guy that directed it, but it was co-written by a woman as well.
Cool.
And
produced,
and produced, So I'm just gonna grab her name quickly. Karen Lee Hall produced it, and it was written by Karen Walton as well. So there is kind of, which I think it needs to have that balance and that female energy present with that, and I'm hoping that's what comes across. In the story, in the screenplay, I should say.
Yeah. So it ended up getting a couple of sequels too, didn't it? So it became. I was
going to mention that at the end, but
sorry.
No, I'm happy to discuss it now. It's all right. We're jumping around. It's all good. This is becoming we're just hacking away at this thing. You know, there's arteries and kind of
like an angry dog at a navel.
Yeah, that's right. So, but yeah, there was two. There was a Ginger Snaps Unleashed. I want to say was the sequel, and that was the spoilers kind of giving things away a little bit. But this was more about Bridget's kind of coming of age.
Yeah.
And as a storyline, and then the last one was called Ginger Snaps Back. It goes back to the Middle Ages. And we see the girls are kind of playing. People are like early settlements.
Is it the same actress?
America. Same actors, yeah.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Wow. Cool. See, that sounds interesting. So I'm getting like sort of the Village vibes from what I'm thinking about that.
Yes,
like,
yeah.
Pilgrims or something.
Yeah, look, like neither of the sequels really were on the same level as this film, and that's often the case with franchises, unfortunately.
Yeah. Unless it's Terminator.
My vague recollection was that the second one was kind of okay, and the third one was all right too. But yeah, they just weren't. They just didn't really kind of. Yeah. They just didn't radiate on the same level.
No, of course.
So look, Ginger, as you said, kind of come back to the storyline. Like Ginger starts taking drugs. She's taking drugs.
That's right.
And hanging out with Jason, who's the guy that you were talking about that she was flirting with.
In the back of the dealer's van, which for some reason they know how to get into, and without permission. Yeah, that's right. Wow.
Yeah. And Bridget is kind of saying, you know, what are you doing? Don't do that. And she goes off and has unprotected sex with Jason, and we
get that whole who's on top thing.
Quite a cool thing where you see her attacking, and then you see her covered in blood, and you think, oh shit, she's killed this guy.
Yeah.
But no, she's actually just killed one of the neighbor's dogs.
Yeah, because she goes to town on his belly, and so I assume he was like eating like his stomach. But before that, you get that whole thing of saying who's the guy here, and she's just like who's the guy, and then just dominates his ass.
Yeah.
But that's great too, because she comes home and Bridget hears her crying, and so she thinks that, like, you know, she got raped or she got hurt or something like that, and says, do you want to report it? Which is like one of the worst things you want to say to someone right after the attack. Then she runs into the bathroom and she's vomiting up all this blood, which you instantly think, oh my god, this guy's been eaten. But it then cuts, I think, straight to the reveal of the fat little boy in the hockey outfit. Now,
I was
going to say, right back to the beginning, when that woman finds the dog, that poor woman, and she runs out into the street, and they're all playing hockey, game on, and they all look over. Yeah, she screams, and then they all just go straight back to the game. Yeah, and it's just like, wow, like I like that. It was that sort of honesty from the get-go of this.
And let's face it, in Canada, there's nothing beats a game of hockey, man. It's the number one game.
I've never been there, but I've seen ice hockey, and it's fucking scary.
You're right, and I'm glad you mentioned that, Richard. Thank you for going back to that. Because when I rewatched that, this time round, I was just like, I fucking loved that moment. Yeah. Of just like life will just roll on.
Yeah.
Regardless.
Yeah. Well, that actually made me want to see The Burbs again, which I think I said off broadcast.
You said that.
Yeah, so I looked that up, and it was just like, that was fun. Because I couldn't also remember the ending. I couldn't remember what the actual definitive ending was, because there's a lot of suggestion in the film. And so I was just like, oh, cool. And so I watched it, and now I remember, and so it's like, I was satisfied. I went back to now watching Carry On films. Yeah. But yes.
So Bridget's getting obviously quite frightened at this point, seeing what's happened to Ginger. She then, the only person she can turn to is Sam, who's the drug dealer dude, because he witnessed what happened, right?
He gets a name now.
So and between the two of them, they have a chat, and they both come to the decision that it's a license rope that's behind it all. And so they hear about the silver, and so that's why this is a bit where she creates the silver ring to basically kind of pierce Bridget with. But in this case, it's ineffective. It doesn't work.
Yeah, well...
So it does kind of show that...
Does she... She also says this on her behalf. She says, I think I'm turning into a werewolf, doesn't she?
Yes.
She doesn't say it's her sister.
So, yes.
Yeah, I didn't get this at this point, but later on I got the impression that she was doing it. She was saying to him that it was her who was not a sister, but within that, the garlic situation as well with vampires. Too, like around the time when the whole thing with Bram Stoker found that disease and things, it was like the only antibiotic that they really had. So if you were to hang it around, it was used in cooking all the time too, but it was also essential to use in cooking because it kept your immune system so high. So that was part of the reason that garlic was such a big thing with vampires. But even within that and certain laws, I didn't know with this Silver thing and her reaction to it, whether or not it was, as you say, it didn't work at all, and it was the placebo effect that made her angry because of the pain, or it was like a Wonder Woman gauntlet type thing, like, you know, as in keeping certain powers in.
Yeah. I think that was what it was giving the impression of at the beginning, but it becomes ineffectual.
Yeah,
because of events that then kind of follow.
Yeah, she rips it out or it pops out or something.
Yeah, that's right. So
Can't remember.
It doesn't work.
Yeah.
So then later the Trinna girl, so that she's the girl that's been kind of bullying them, she turns up at the Fitzgerald's house claiming that Ginger's kidnapped her dog. And this is when she becomes quite aggressive, but Trinna accidentally slips, hits her head on the corner of the kitchen counter, and dies in this kind of like blood.
Brilliant way. It's such an awesome way. Now, before this too, when they're exiting the van after they've been smoking pot, they have that altercation with the dog, the little sort of Rottweiler that's barking at Ginger, in an aggressive way, and she kicks the dog, which we don't see on screen, but we obviously get the implications for that. But what's cool about that too is we don't know if that was her. I don't know. I didn't get the sense that whether or not it was a conscious decision or it was her reaction, her gut reaction, that sort of just made her like a werewolf react.
I got the latter. I got that it was more of a reaction to, or a defensive reaction, you know.
Because then she has to leave the social situation. Yeah.
Yes, that's it. Yeah. So look, we get this kind of like great death scene with Trinna, and like the girls are like have this dead body in their house at the time when Mum and Dad are coming home.
Yeah.
And so there's this great moment where they hide the body. We don't know where at this point. And Ginger then kind of dives onto the pool of blood, and they kind of
run in and take a photo.
Whips in and takes the photo as they walk in. So from their point of view, Mum and Dad's point of view, it's just one of their crazy kind of things, you know. And, and the mum kind of is like, "I told you not to do that stuff in the house."
And then goes to put the frozen meats or whatever in the deep freeze.
Yeah, in the deep freeze, and that's where we see the body. Yeah,
it's so good. But also to the reaction from Bridget in that scene when she runs out with the camera, she takes the photo and she sort of like looks up, and you can tell that she is so disturbed. And Ginger's on the ground, and she's sort of like half in this sort of grazed makeup sort of thing, and licking the blood, saying it's just corn syrup. But it's like daddy's little girl, like, you know, then like really playing that up.
It's cool.
It was freaky. No, I thought that was done really well, because too, when it was just like, oh my god, she's in the freezer, there was that cliche thing, but it works so well. It works, and it also too works with that mother character too, because she's played a little bit bigger.
Yes, that's right. And I love the bit where they go back to the body later on once Mum and Dad have gone to bed, and they've got to we've got to get rid of the body, and so she gets a screwdriver.
And because everything's all the ice is frozen like right over.
That's it. And then she starts hacking away, and then she pulls out 2 fingers. It's like, no.
Yeah,
it's good. Somehow though, they are able to prise the body out, and they kind of drag it off and bury her. They bury her somewhere, don't they? From memory,
they bury her in the backyard, don't they?
I don't think was it her? Oh yeah, it's their backyard. Yes, it's their own backyard.
Yeah, because at least the fingers are in the backyard.
Yeah, that's right.
They end up there. Yeah. But also what was it? Sam tells Bridget as well that the thing that they need to use for the elixir stuff is monk's hood.
Yes, that's the next thing. Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, also known as like wolfsbane, devil's helmet.
Yes, yes, that's it. And so she, and this is kind of like the crux of, and that's part of what I said. Going back to mythology kind of discussions, that is part of that. The whole kind of wolfsbane kind of plant that supposedly is a way of keeping. That is supposedly a way of kind of keeping werewolves at bay or deterring it from occurring. So. So yeah, they go and talk to Sam, and because he's a drug guy, he knows these things, you know. He's a learned guy, at least.
Yeah,
in,
that's it.
the
He's a chemist.
world of botany. Yeah,
I mean, well, yeah, you can't go to the drugstore anymore. That's why you have to go to your local drug dealer. I love it too. How in the I think it's the Wikipedia explanation, it just refers to him as a local drug dealer. It's just like, yeah, it's Jim's Drugs. Hello, welcome.
Hi, welcome to Jim's Drugs.
Would you like some soda pop? Maybe some cocaine? That's the toothpaste has them both.
But apparently, like this, I love this bit too. When he's talking about the monkshood thing, he tells them that monkshood grows everywhere. And they're like, "Where do we get it?" Well, you can get it anywhere.
Yeah, yeah.
Really? All right.
Like in, what is it, the Forest game, or one of those online open world things where it's just like, oh, you need to be healed or from a poison or something like that. You just got to find this little plant, and it's not in your area of the island. It's on the completely different side of the map. You're like, well, it's going to kill me to get over there anyway. But yeah, what was it? Monk's hood as well is a toxic thing too. There's a lot of poisoning and stuff like that. Gastrointestinal, nausea, vomiting, diarrhea, cardiovascular problems, hypertension. So yeah, it's not a fun thing to play with. Having said that, the tomato plant is part of that as well. I mean, and most of I don't know if it's the same family, but it's definitely one of those poisonous roots that comes from it. It's one of those fancy sort of names like devil weed or whatever. But but we usually get the best sort of modern science and modern chemicals from stripping it away from things like that. I mean, we've got anti-venom from venoms and stuff like that.
Yeah,
penicillin came from mold.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly.
Cool.
So when he's talking about this and he's kind of like saying that this could be, but it only grows during spring. He says that's right. But then Ginger then kind of gets really angry with him for no reason, and basically kind of accuses him of just wanting to have sex with Bridget and walks off in a bit of a huff. But then on Halloween, we're at Halloween now, and so Bridget then is able to get some of monkshood from her mum.
Yeah, she got them from the craft store.
Just happened to have purchased some from the local craft store.
Yeah, the hobby store.
And she asks Sam to make the cure. So Sam says basically like, is it for Ginger?
Now, it looks like he makes a tincture. I don't know exactly what he's sort of doing, but he doesn't distill it. Yeah. He boils it in alcohol or isopropyl alcohol or ethanol, purest form. And usually in that, with what you're doing is you're supposed to burn off the alcohol and all the liquid out of it so that you get the purest form of that, which is the tincture. Which you wouldn't... I don't know if you would inject, because that... would kill you, I assume.
That's what they do, though, isn't it? Exactly. But that's the method they're going with.
That's That's the law that we're going to lend ourselves over to. But they make some sort of elixir which goes into a thing, and it's black. It's like,
it's nasty.
Reanimator flashbacks though.
So basically, like he's working on that. So then Bridget then tries to track down Ginger. At which point she's attacked by Jason, who Ginger has infected through unprotected sex, and this is where we find out that he's also turning.
My red pen broke.
So Bridget defends herself by using the cure on him, and this is where she sees an immediate change in his behavior, and he's just like, "Oh, I'm gonna go home now," with this kind of needle stuck in his syringe in his neck.
Yeah, so stumbles off. It was great.
Yeah, so this is where it proves that the cure does work. So now she just needs some more to kind of track down Ginger. At which point, Ginger then comes back to the school and she's looking for Jason. And there's a message on the PA which asks her to go to, Bridget, I think, go to the guidance officer. And she's then dragged inside by Ginger, who has killed the counsellor.
That's right.
Yeah. And Bridget
That's
basically is able to...
The male counselor.
The male counselor, that's
Yes.
right. Bridget's able to calm the ginger down. She goes to find cleaning supplies, but returns to see the janitor with his throat torn open.
Yeah. That was good.
And he... Yeah.
Because they have a sort of moment beforehand where it's she
Thank you, I was about to say that.
Sorry, whether or not I didn't see it, but I wasn't looking and I didn't rewind to watch. But there's an interaction I think that Bridget has with the janitor, who's sort of an elderly Asian man, seems quite nice enough. But Ginger says no, he was staring at your breasts, like he was staring at your chest. And you go, oh, okay, well, I didn't know if he was doing that. He didn't seem that way. But I like that ambiguousness, whether you don't know if she's just planted that seed because he's another guy.
Yes, that's right. Yes.
And if it's an innocent death, it works still just the same in the impact of the story because it's her rage and her things like this. And also, too, from the perspective of Bridget, her character doesn't feel like it's a justified death. Out of all of them that have happened so far. But also, too, on the sexually transmitted disease idea or infection idea, it being transferred to Jason, the character, through sex, I thought was fantastic as well, because it plays on that fear as well, which a lot of modern day women, and I assume at that time when sex ed had become a lot more open and discussed a lot more, it became a lot more about a fear of pregnancy and STDs or STIs.
Yes, that's right.
Which was scary and unknown, and you couldn't talk to anyone about it, and you didn't want to talk to your parents and stuff like that, and if you did talk to your friends, it was all about, oh yeah, or whatever. So, it's playing with so many different elements in this, and so then to have that moment when Jason comes out and is starting to, physically assault Bridget.
That's right. That's right.
It's great.
Yeah, no, it's good. It's good. It's a good little moment. Yeah. So, but he's still alive. The janitor dude is still alive at this point.
Yeah.
But Bridget says they should have gone to get help, but this is where they end up. She just embowels him with her hand. Essentially, she just kind of guts him, kills him off.
Gives him a gutten.
Guts him out. The sister's mother then discovers Trina's corpse and goes to find her daughters, because she's suddenly realizing that they killed this girl.
Yeah.
And as she drives them, she kind of finds Bridget at there's like a kind of party that's going on, as is always the case in these things. And she tells her that she will, and this is an interesting moment where the mum says, it's okay, I'll burn down the house. I'll get rid of all the evidence of Trina's death. And they'll just leave. And so...
and they said, what about Dad?
So, and he's just like, he'll be okay.
Yeah, that's what I meant. It was a weird sort of thing, and I didn't know what that was trying to say, as in... if he had already bailed, or if, I got a vibe that's where I think it was,
we don't see Dad again, though, do we?
I think from that point on, the last time we see him is at that dinner when she whips out the cake.
Yeah, that's right. I think you're right, yeah. So he's a bit of an irrelevant role, really, isn't it?
But I think that also says... again about it, it's I don't know whether it's a feminist sort of or a stance or anything of it, but it distances those sort of male roles. But again, because of the turmoil of what's happening in the climax of that story, makes complete sense with the janitor and all of these.
That's right.
Elements.
Yeah. Okay, so she's saying that. So then Bridget then goes in to kind of find Sam. At the same point, Sam is being kind of accosted by Ginger.
Who's now full on Buffy, Angel.
Buffy, Angel,
sort of thing, and starts hitting on it. Now, before this as well, this is when Bridget locked Ginger in the bathroom, and this is also this is also after Ginger tried to cut her tail off with the knife. And she
that's right.
puts it in the drawer. That's right, because I was like, oh yeah, that's a MacGuffin. They're going to bring back to that later on. But I like that whole locking her in the bathroom thing. I don't know.
Yeah. No, that was cool. Yeah, I've forgotten that bit too. Sorry, I'm jumping around.
No. You're
but yeah, that's a great moment. And she managed to prize herself free, and so she then kind of wants to get revenge a little bit, so she goes to kind of hunt down Sam.
Yep.
And but he's like, there's a moment where he is kind of sort of
Into it.
falling to prey and enjoying it a little bit, but then he does. Then also, he's trying to resist her as well at the same time.
Yeah, it was a little bit Willy Wonka. What was it? Oh,
Yeah.
don't stop, come back.
Yeah.
But
That's right.
until he sees that she has, what is it, like 8 nipples, 8 inch long
Yeah.
nipples. Which sort of weirded me out because I was sort of like, okay, fair enough, she's got tits like a dog, but why has she got 2 bulgy tits up the top and 6 non or whatever how many you're supposed to have? But yeah. So that definitely turns him off.
Yes,
but
it's like
at the same time as when I think Bridget comes in.
Yeah, Bridget then comes in at this point. Yeah,
Yep.
So Ginger breaks Sam's arm at this point, and she's threatening to. That's right, she's threatening to kill Sam, and Bridget then infects herself in order to pull Ginger away. And this is where she throws back to the whole, we're sisters, we had a pact. Right?
That's right. Yeah.
So that kind of is able to lure Ginger away from Sam.
Yeah, and they get it back out to the car. At this point, doesn't the mum go inside?
I don't think we see the mum. I don't know where she. I thought she just got left out in the car.
I thought she got left out in the car, but for some reason I feel like she goes into the party.
Maybe I don't remember that, but there's a point where as they're leaving, though, Sam catches up and he knocks Ginger out with a shovel.
Yeah.
So they don't actually leave. Like, they don't actually get to leave. So Bridget and Sam then take her back to their house in his van as they try to kind of work on a way of getting a cure for Ginger so that he can prep up the stuff.
Yep.
So in the back of the van, though, she's kind of having this full-on transformation. This is where she then goes full werewolf.
Yep.
And she's able to escape the van and get out. And afraid and they're unaware that she has transformed. They just know that somehow she's gotten out.
Yeah.
So they kind of hide in this kind of pantry while he tries to make the solution. And
That's
then
right. He gets
and
destroyed.
then Sam goes to find Ginger, and he then kind of comes across Ginger, who's now transformed, and she basically mutilates and kills Sam.
Yeah.
At this point, Bridget then picks up the syringe that he had, because he was going to do the guy thing, going to go in, I'll get you, I'll do it, and he gets killed, which I like. So it kind of leaves it with Bridget to kind of pick up the baton, in this case the syringe.
Well, even I was just going to say, as Sam dies, there's never that trope of the romantic, like, Bridget and him don't get together, and even there's that moment when he says, "Oh, Ginger was saying I was only talking to you to get into your pants, and I'm not."
Yes.
And it was sort of like, and I, at that point I was like, oh, is that something that they're going to switch back later on by saying, when I said I didn't love you before, I was lying. But because they didn't do that, I really, as you said, like that when he died, because it was now, like, he was expendable from the beginning, really. Like,
that's right, from the get-go.
Yeah, he was going to either die or not be important. I even thought that he was going to stay at that party after the shovel thing. But yeah. His death is great because it's almost like Alien in this moment, because it really has this sense of being stalked, and you have to be quiet because this thing you can't reason with. And that's the one thing I do, I guess, like about werewolves, is the idea that you completely transform into something you can't reason with. Whether it's your friend, your family, or anything like that. Even with ghosts and stuff like this, it's usually that idea of being able to go, no, but remember the love we had, or something that brings them back. With a werewolf, no. Once it's full moon,
some pottery with me.
Exactly. Yeah. Put some swaging on. But do some dirty dancing. But the idea with a werewolf is that there is no. It's once it's full moon, it's just gonna tear and destroy.
There ain't no going back.
And you're lucky if you survive.
Yeah, that's cool. So there's this death scene in particular is because he's not he's kind of basically dying on the floor.
Yep.
But there's this great bit where I love this scene where Bridget then tries to mimic the wolf-like
Yeah.
behavior by drinking from Sam's blood.
Yeah. This is what I was talking about. That it's so thick,
Yeah.
chunky.
And in order to try and kind of calm the ginger wolf down,
Yep.
and it's working at first, but then she starts to choke on the
Vomit
blood
up.
and wants to vomit. Yeah. And noticing that's when Ginger just kind of completely kills Sam, like completely eviscerates him at this point.
Yeah.
And then she goes to leap at Bridget, and there's they then have this kind of interaction down in the basement, and they end up at the room where they grew up. So right at the very beginning, so that kind of scene, and Bridget finds the knife that Ginger had been using to remove her tail, and she's holding the cure in one hand and the knife in the other. So she's kind of got this thing like kill or cure kind of moment. And Bridget is told, so she says she's not going to leave, and this kind of just like really pisses off the ginger wolf, and so she lunges at Bridget, and she kind of collapses on her, and you're like, well, is she killed her or is she cured, or what's happened? And then it's revealed that it's the knife that's gone into Ginger, not the cure. And the movie ends with this moment where Bridget's kind of the wolf is lying on the floor and it's breathing very slowly, and Bridget kind of walks up to it and just kind of lies her head next to it as it's breathing, and we see this kind of moment, and then eventually the breathing just stops, and Bridget just starts kind of sobbing a bit, and then it fades to black, and that's the end of the film.
It was really nice.
Yeah.
What was it when it was happening? It sort of reminded me a bit of Van Helsing when he what is it? Right at the end of the something similar happens. It's like the woman jumps in front of a blade or something like this, and he transforms from the werewolf into a human again, and he's going, It's very funny. But it reminded me of that, not because it was funny, but because it was just similar in that. But the slow tracking backwards of that, it was very somber. It was very sincere. It was loving. It was
it's really nicely done.
Yeah, it was very nicely done. And to have it with such a creature effect, I was very happy with. I thought that was very nice, because you don't usually get to see that, like, outside of a King Kong or a Jurassic Park, something where they're actually interacting with something that's not really there. But even before that, there was something I was going to say back when Sam was getting killed. Oh, the vomiting. That's right. Always a huge fan of vomiting, and that was a great vomit take. I don't know how they did that, but that was awesome.
Yeah, it was good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Insert Team America vomit scene.
So look, so we've ploughed through this thing. We've kind of eviscerated this thing. We've ripped it apart, and we've examined it. So, and there's some kind of like, and when I've revisited this thing, and I to go back to what I said at the very beginning, I remember having this great reaction from it when I went to the Fright Fest and watching it. I really loved it, and I must have watched it a handful of times after the fact, while it was still in the buzz and stuff. But I don't know if I really kind of revisited it until recently, and so I still had this kind of strong kind of nostalgic memory of it and really loving it. And I was a little bit daunted about going into that, going, am I going to rewatch this and kind of it's going to end up being like I Know What You Did Last Summer and or Urban Legends, that kind of what came out at that same time, where it's kind of okay, but it doesn't hold up, Yeah. And I'm almost a little bit afraid about going back and watching The Craft again for the same exact same
good
reason.
point, actually. Yeah, love that movie.
Yeah. So look, but I have to say that I did come out of it and went, I really love it. The beats to it are really, really good. It's a great little story. The characters are really fleshed out, no pun intended, and it's kind of I love that sister relationship and. So some people there were some critics that argued that the feminist or the female perspective or take on it was laid on a bit too thick. I disagree. I think it's done in a really nice tone. So I just came out of it. Yeah.
No, I was just even going to say I felt almost that the werewolf side of it was laid on a bit thick. I would have loved to have seen it if it was just
a bit more subliminal,
implied werewolf.
Cool.
Yeah.
That'd be good.
But yeah, no, I agree. I thought it was fantastic. I hadn't seen it before, but it made me think that if I saw it when it first came out, I think I still would have enjoyed it. But I would have been, I think, being a young boy in high school, in the minority to turn around and say that I did enjoy it purely because it was more of a female-dominated thing. But that was just because young kids be shit.
Exactly. Oh, yeah, that's right.
Yeah. Having said that, like, as in it's not a. I wouldn't say it's a feminist film because it's the sort of thing of. It's everyone's film and everyone can take appreciation away from this. Having said that, it doesn't mean that it's an anti-feminist film. I mean, it's very empowering. I shouldn't think so. It's very empowering to women because it, even though it discusses subject matter which maybe some women wouldn't want to talk about, the comparisons to local folklore and story and myth is a very good gap to bridge with people who don't understand that or aren't opening to listening or seeing a conventional story that might be in that sort of stark reality which I was saying before without the supernatural elements in it.
Yes.
But by doing that, it just joins those two things together with performance, with the direction, with the special effects, the story and everything. No. I thought it was absolutely brilliant, and it really does. It makes me want to now see the sequels, and it's surprising.
Yeah, look,
because
they're a fun ride, I have to say. Like they're
the
okay,
same cast, and if it's
they're the same cast, they're the same girls in it. Like Ginger in the second one, Ginger kind of is more of a whether she's a ghost or a figment of Bridget's imagination, it's never really disclosed.
Oh, okay. So it's almost like that Werewolf in London situation. Because I was going to say, she's dead in the end of this. At least you find out.
Yes, that's right. That's right. That one definitely is.
Yeah. Having said that too, with werewolves, when they say the whole silver bullet thing, I assumed that is the only thing that could kill a werewolf.
Yeah.
Obviously, it's not. Like, werewolves are just like a big beastie type thing. It's the same as if you said there's an ogre. Like, it's 20 foot high, but it is still destructible. If you took to it with a cannon or a machine gun to its kneecaps, that kneecap's going to go. Like, it's not an Evil Dead creature. But having said that, no, I loved it, and the different styles that this film took. I don't know. I saw its budget before, but it wasn't necessarily a major budget film. It was only $4.5 million. So it obviously made enough back to be able to make a franchise and sequels to it.
That's right.
Yeah, which is great. And
you could argue that because the other two weren't as strong, that they that it would probably because they didn't have the same director, so that could well in part have a lot to do with it.
Yeah.
Not carrying through that kind of same vision. Well, I did want to add, like, just as a slight kind of step to one side as well, is like I feel like there was a film that came out about 2016 which was called Raw, and that I absolutely hands down love that film.
Yeah.
And it has a very similar thing where it's about, in this case, it's a young girl who's a vegetarian, and she goes to a veterinary school, and this is where she ends up tasting meat for the first time, and then she starts to develop a craving for flesh. And it becomes like a cannibalistic kind of tale. But it's also, like Ginger Snaps, is a coming of age story in of itself. And it's great. I love it. I love it. But it's very dark. There's not much I don't think there is any humor in it, actually. So it's very dark. But I beautiful film, French film by Julia, and I'm not going to pronounce her surname, so I do apologise, but I want to say it's Ducournau.
So how do you spell it? Is that because all that's coming up is that 1980s film?
It's raw, as in when meat is not cooked raw.
Ah, yes. RAW.
Yeah,
the raw.
It came out like 2016. Yeah. But I highly recommend it. I did a review of it whenever it came out, and I thought it was brilliant.
Cool.
Um,
Because another one
so
that was
yeah,
coming up in regards to this, I think was it Jennifer's Body or Jessica's Body?
yes, that had its own kind of bit of a cult following as well because of Megan Fox. That's kind of when she kind of was,
Oh, okay.
and it's Amanda Seyfried from memory
Oh, yeah.
is the our protagonist in that one.
Yeah. It was
And
funny because
again,
when you mentioned...
I guess that is a bit of a coming of age kind of sexual exploitation kind of feature as well.
Because when you
And the
mentioned Raw,
insecurities of
all that
women
I found that came up was the 1981 film about all the lions. You know, the ones everyone got attacked.
Yes, not that one. Nice.
Yeah.
All right, cool. So look, we're obviously, I think we're both obviously incredibly appreciative of the film and Ginger Snaps, and I think we're both kind of saying that it still stands up despite the fact that it's 20 years old.
Yeah.
So my age-old question, as we bow out of these podcasts, and I'll throw it over to you now, is: would you recommend this to a modern-going audience?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
I do think, like, you know, the films of the 2000s have got a certain style to them, but this is, like, the grittiness and the raw works so well with this. And the homages that it's paying to different films and stuff like that, you won't get thrown on. The only thing that might throw you off is either the subject matter being too on the nose, or But again, if you're watching horror films, I think that you'd probably be able to take it, and also the special effects of the werewolf towards the end of the thing. Having said that, though,
it gets a bit kind of there is a bit. Although I say that, but it's kind of almost looked like Brundlefly a little bit at the end, where it is that kind of real animatronic kind of creature, and that's what she kind of looked like. The wolf kind of looked like the big eye kind of kind of thing. So it takes you out a little bit because it doesn't.
No, well, that's what I mean. It may be to some
too plastic looking.
Yeah, it may be to some people.
As opposed to being like a real living, breathing entity.
Yeah.
So
Having said that, though, like I personally really like that when you can communicate the emotion through that, like in like King Kong, and stuff like that, where you're endowing enough onto it so that, like, you know, even in what was it, Jurassic World, when they had that long necked dinosaur and they had that sort of like nice moment. I mean, like, you know. That was like one of the only nice moments in that film, but it's a film that I think it would still hold up nowadays for most audiences, especially because it's a good film for people, especially young girls who might be going through an emo or a gothic or just sort of even just a stage by yourself. It might be a good film to watch, like, you know, with your sisters and things like this. Maybe not your family, your mums and dads or anything like that. But no, it's been popular. Any review I've seen around has been saying it was a great film. Any person I've spoken to has liked it, both male and female. Any girl I've spoken to has recalled certain elements, mainly about what was it, the pictures that they were taking at the beginning, where it's like her impaled on certain things. And stuff like that.
That's right.
It would always go into a really good discussion about what the film was trying to say, what the symbolism was, the metaphors and things like that with it, and usually lends itself to a good conversation, just in general, because it's a good conversation starter on those subject matters. But even from a Rotten Tomatoes point of view, I mean, it's got a 89% on the tomato meter.
That's right. Yeah, still quite.
And even the audience is saying 78. I'm surprised it's actually not higher.
Maybe, but then maybe there are some of those kind of people that just didn't. It just didn't bite with them, you know.
Yes.
So, but there you go. Yeah. As you way. Cool, man. Well, look, I think on that note, we could probably bow out the podcast record, and we're giving it a big thumbs up from the Surgeons of Horror crew.
Absolutely.
So if you haven't seen it, go and check it out. It's a good. I think the big thing for me was that it was a good, fun piece, and it's enjoyable. It's an enjoyable flick.
Yeah.
As a result, so yeah,
it was good fun, but it was also just dark enough. Like, you know, as in you didn't feel like you were going to, like, you know, have to overcome this feeling of what this film was going to be giving you, but it had enough darkness there as well to keep its substance going, and also to make you feel for all the people involved.
Yeah, definitely.
And far better than the Wolfman, the one with what's his name? Anthony Hopkins.
Benicio del Toro.
Yeah, I don't know. I didn't like that.
Yeah, no, I didn't either.
Was not a fan.
No, I wasn't either.
No.
Okay, man. All right. On that note, well, I'd just like to say thank you to Richard Lovegrove for joining us for the podcast discussions on Ginger Snaps, and I've been your host, Saul Muerte. Let us know if you have watched this film, or if you liked it yourself, or if you disagree with our sentiments and you think that it was a big steaming pile of turd.
Yeah.
We'd love to hear from you either way.
Werewolf
So
turd.
throw us a line and on our usual social platforms where you can find us on Surgeons of Horror. Until then, we wish you good speed and tune in for some more kind of discussions along the way for season 7.
Yes.
Until then, goodbye.
We wish you good speed, good cocaine, and good marijuana. Well, or cannabis.
You're listening to the Surgeons of Horror podcast. Music supplied by Peter Nezik. For more discussions or podcasts, head over to surgeonsofhorror.com or head over to our Facebook and Twitter sites for the latest news and updates.